With the NSA.
There is something real here.
Did you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
And where?
I know the exact locations, and those locations were provided to the Inspector General and some of which to the intelligence committees. I actually had people with the first-hand knowledge provide a protected disclosure to the Inspector General. Biologics came to some of these recoveries.
Those could represent exquisite new adversary technology.
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still in the program.
The government is covering up some level of its knowledge and understanding about what some of those things are.
The Sol Foundation, which just announced a new initiative for UFO research and policy.
It's nuts, man. I mean, we're just small-town buds who saw a UFO in the woods. I mean, now we're hanging out with the government.
Wow. What floor were you guys on?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. This is another live edition of Anomaly-NOW, straight out of Austin, Texas. I'm your host, Smiles Lewis, and it is Wednesday, March 12th, 3/12/2025. Welcome to the show. Cheers. Oh, cheers. This is the weekly live news and media roundup for the 501c3 nonprofit Scientific Anomaly Institute, aka the Anomaly Archives, preserving UFO and anomaly-related material since 2003. Well, I've been actually preserving it since before that, but that's when we founded the nonprofit and started doing this. So you can go to our website, anomalyarchives.org. You can also go to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/anomalyarchives. And you can also go to our Flipboard, where we aggregate all of our anomalous news and information. That's flipboard.com/@anomalyarchives/ a bunch of other stuff that you can click on when you get to the @Anomaly Archives. All kinds of links there for this week. Stuff we're not going to get to. Actor Thomas Jane about Forbidden Worlds, MUFON 2025. Actor Thomas Jane, whom you might know from such movies as The Expanse sci-fi series and Tropo, a Australian or New Zealand-based detective drama series. Fun little show. He's an actor. He's going to be going on as the keynote speaker for this year's MUFON Symposium. Seems a little weird to me. Don't know that much about him other than I like some of the roles he's played. This whole idea of an actor who doesn't seem to have any real connection to UFO research or had necessarily UFO experiences. Maybe he has. Maybe he's going to reveal that. But his talk is going to be called Forbidden Worlds. A lot of other links, including this one, Richard Doty, Disinformation, Paul Benowitz, and UAP Whistleblower Fallout over at thedebrief.org. Host Chrissy Newton will be hosting her Rebelliously Curious interview show, and I haven't had the chance to check that out, but it's one of those things, you know. Richard Doty's an interesting person. Not sure that I think he should be getting a revitalized image and doing the lecture circuit, but here we are, 2025. A bunch of other articles that may or may not interest you. Revival of the Socorro saucer prank hoax hypothesis from a blog or website called factorlblog.com. I'm guessing that's L as in the factorlblog.com from Administrador de Factor. And a bunch of other stuff that you can find over at our Flipboard. But let's just dive right in for this week's show. Of course, as always, I encourage you to support the efforts of the Anomaly Archives by going to patreon.com/Anomaly Archives, where you can join for free, or you can help support us and our goal of getting it back into a physical location by donating on a monthly basis, either $1, $2, $5, or if you do at the $10 or higher level, you get access to the Anomaly Academy monthly lecture series. And this month's lecture is going to be by our good friend Micah Hanks, who's presenting Sasquatch, Relict, Hominoids in History and Official Files. And you can find out more information about that over at the patreon.com website. That's going to be this coming Wednesday, March 26, 2025. Exact time to be set, probably 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, same time as this show. So probably no show at that time. But we'll be having a great time hearing Micah discuss all his research and others' research into the probable, some say certain, existence of a North American ape, a nape, relict hominoid or hominid. And of course, you should probably know Micah from all of his amazing podcasts, the Micah Hanks Program, Sasquatch Tracks, and Middle Theory podcasts, as well as being a co-founder and editor at thedebrief.org, a fantastic new news outlet that's been around for the last several years that's transitioned with the UFO to UAP topic. Meanwhile, it was Micah who brought my attention to this press release from the SCU, Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies. Robust U.S. government investment in science is key to discovery and prosperity that benefits all Americans. And I think this is a pretty interesting press release from the SCU, which you can read over at their website, explorescu.org. SCU stands with science, Washington, D.C., March 7th, 2025. Today, the Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies, SCU, released the following announcement. The Scientific Coalition for UAP Studies strongly opposes the federal government's sudden and capricious funding freezes to public science and research agencies, which include overhead caps, mass firings, blanket credit card freezes, communication blackouts, data deletions, keyword censorship, and other interferences. These agencies directly and indirectly support our nation's valuable investment in scientists, scientific institutions, and research programs, including projects related to the study of unidentified anomalous phenomena. Every part of the U.S. research landscape is suffering harm from these impulsive actions. We join millions of scientists, citizens, and organizations nationwide in standing up for science. These funding disruptions have already severely reduced graduate school admissions across the U.S., caused widespread hiring freezes at universities, canceled undergraduate summer and year-long programs, damaged long-term data collection, derailed projects, and choked off the submission of new research proposals. Top researchers and early career scientists are looking overseas for more stable funding opportunities, suggesting the nation risks a quote-unquote brain drain if these interruptions continue. This will undermine our economic growth for decades to come. And then they go on in this press release, which, as I say, you can read over at explorescu.org under the headline, Robust U.S. Government Investment in Science is Key to Discovery and Prosperity that Benefits All Americans. I haven't had the chance to read the rest of that, but I strongly suspect that I agree completely. And the views expressed on this show are only those of this guy right here and do not necessarily reflect those of the 501c3 nonprofit Anomaly Archives, though maybe they do. Meanwhile, what's been the big thing? Well, of course, we talked about how at this year's South by Southwest, there has been the premiere of the new age disclosure documentary at the Paramount there on Congress Avenue in downtown Austin, Texas. We've been anticipating this. Wasn't going to fork out the money required to get into that shindig. Also, just not that interested. I think it'll be great when I finally get to see it, but hopefully it does advance the topic, but I have my doubts. But that said, can't wait to watch it. Meanwhile, you can watch this brief 23-minute video uploaded by a YouTube channel called The Magenta Project, which is the 1933 UFO crash in Italy. Not sure if they are producing a documentary on that alleged case, though it's my understanding that most old school ufologists long ago dismissed it as a hoax. But of course, this has been revived by the likes of David Grush and other alleged whistleblowers. But at this Magenta Project YouTube channel, you can see this 23-minute video, The Age of Disclosure, South by Southwest 3925 Q&A featuring Dan Farah, David Fravor, Ryan Graves, Gary Nolan, and more. And as you can see in this picture, there is the director, Dan Farah, as well as there's David Fravor, the Marine fighter pilot. And over here on the far right is Ryan Graves. And there between them are Jay Stratton, who, of course, is an important link in the chain of the recently 2017 on revealed post OSAP, ATIP, UAPTF, Arrow continuum of modern current era government quote unquote disclosure about UFOs, UAPs. Standing next to him is John Gold, the fellow from NASA, and also who worked for Bigelow, I believe, BAAS, BAAS. And then there is Gary Nolan and Tim Burchett. And coming on last on the stage as they reorganize themselves, retired Admiral Tim Gaiaday. And yeah, you can go watch that. Nothing too exciting revealed. Oh, they did bring up Hal Puthoff onto the stage, and apparently other people who appear in the documentary are in the audience. I think they continued to have everybody stand up in the audience who was participating in that. There is the audience there. Not sure who all else was in attendance. Can't quite make out those other people, but yay, pretty cool that they all came to the premiere. I think that's good of them. You can go watch it for yourself and decide. So there has been, of course, some mainstream news coverage of this new documentary. People Magazine over at people.com, director of Groundbreaking UFO Doc, says what he learned left him, quote, rattled. Quote, things could get really bad really fast, unquote. Quote, I've tried to make a serious, credible, eye-opening movie that brings out as much of the truth as possible, says The Age of Disclosure director Dan Farah. And something you will hear over and over, and I think this was even in the congressional hearings, is the allusion to the information gap and the ridicule factor hindering research and putting us all in danger because of the possibility of a new 9/11, a new September 11th terror attack type event as a result of us not looking into UFO, UAP technology and the phenomenon and the potential, the apparent alleged arms race between the superpowers as they try to retrieve these crashed objects, technologies, living creatures maybe, and reverse engineer them for, of course, militarization, weaponization. Yeah. I mean, I don't doubt all that. I don't doubt that that is true. It just all has the ring of, give us more money for military funding. Meanwhile, over at Variety.com, aliens are real. U.S. government officials have admitted, quote, the age of disclosure. Director Dan Farrar wants you to know there's more to the story. You can read all that over at Variety.com. This other one, I believe, is a little more critical. Groundbreaking UFO documentary director breaks silence on film's revelations. Quote, none of the government leadership I spoke to are debating whether this is real. Well, if I'm understanding this article correctly, neither does this documentary, which is to say there is not necessarily a critical skeptical side presented in this documentary. And so with that said, I will take us over to Anomalous.com, who wrote, one of their journalists wrote for their March 11th entry talking about all this coverage. Director of Groundbreaking UFO Doc, the People magazine article is linked to. And the Anomalous.com's journalist writes, Dan Farrar's new documentary, The Age of Disclosure, is riling up mainstream media entertainment writers. People's Johnny Dodd reports it's also caused Farrar more than a few qualms as well. Dodd discloses some of the impressive cast of characters and their backgrounds in government, the military, science, and the UFO story, plus the gist of their testimonies. And the trailer for the film is hard-hitting. Variety's Salome Hailou headlines, aliens are real, U.S. government officials have admitted. Yeah, we already read the title. Hailou's focus on the governmental machinations purportedly behind the cover-up helps explain why knee-jerk, quote, it's only anecdotal information dismissals are unfortunate. But Daniel Feinberg of The Hollywood Reporter asserts in his article, Feinberg thinks the documentary puts style over substance and also seizes on what Hailou noted about Jay Stratton and Luis Elizondo's prominence among the figures in the film, whom Feinberg calls, quote-unquote, talking heads. But Entertainment's Mike Miller is, quote, kinder and gentler to those speaking in Farrar's film, explaining how explosive new UFO doc got Marco Rubio and other high-ranking officials to break their silence on aliens. Echoing our lead article's term, groundbreaking doc, quote unquote, Miller has Farrar answering the, quote, it's only theories claim from critics, touching upon the bipartisan congressional leadership in trying to reveal pertinent information and emphasizing the real risks these American heroes are taking in coming forward. Yes. So in the Hollywood Reporter article, the writer says, quote, from there, Disclosure spins a deft narrative that details an alleged 80 years cover-up of UFOs while attempting to answer several burning questions, such as how do the crafts work, why have they crashed, who is covering this up, and what do U.S. presidents know. The film will undoubtedly convert many skeptics while also generating some skepticism of its own. I suspect this is just, again, dare I say it, propaganda for this echo chamber of belief and myth that I too grew up believing in. And to my credit or detriment, you decide. Over the years, I've become much more skeptical of these stories. I do tend to think where there's smoke, there's fire, but I also recognize that you can't trust these institutions to give you, quote unquote, the truth. Meanwhile, it turns out that Jacques Vallée was just in town and had dinner with Joe Rogan and Hal Puthoff and undoubtedly others the night before this interview was recorded. This was posted just earlier today over on the YouTube Joe Rogan channel, Powerful JRE channel. And I haven't gotten very far into it. The first part focuses on Jacques' involvement in the Stanford Research Institute's, SRI's, public and covertly funded remote viewing, psychic remote viewing, RV experiments and research that went on there back in the 70s. And then they move on to other topics. But as usual, this is almost a 3-hour interview. Should be very interesting. Jacques has, of course, been making the rounds to promote his latest diary journal entry that's been put out, Volume 6, which I've mentioned in previous episodes. You can read reviews of these over at theobservermagazine.substack.com, reading Jacques' diary. Jacques Vallée or forgets to lock his diary, and Bernie O'Connor takes full advantage in his review of the latest offering from Anomalous Books. That's right, folks. Anomalist.com, where we were reading that previous news article from, is also the publisher company AnomalousBooks.com. And they've been putting out the paperback versions of Jacques' books, both the journals and reprints of his past books. But yes, you can go to theobservermagazine.substack.com and read this review there of the latest one, Forbidden Science number 6, Scattered Castles, the journals of Jacques Vallée from 2010 to 2019. I am still making my way, trying desperately to finish the previous volume, volume 5, but it always takes me forever because there's just so much there that I want to take notes on. It often takes me 6 to 9 months to finish one of these volumes. But yes, I highly recommend them. I've said this over and over again. I highly, highly recommend Jacques' Forbidden Science journals. Meanwhile, you might find of interest this interview with Tanner Boyle and Emily Louise, who are speaking with Erica Lukes and Jack Brewer of Expanding Frontiers Research. And I've recommended Tanner Boyle's blog before, his Getting Spooked blog, and Emily's Weird Reads with Emily Louise YouTube channel is fantastic. I found her by first coming across one of her documentaries on the Alternative 3 story. Fantastic job that she did. And it makes me so happy to know that they've found each other, and that sometime either late last year or early this year, they got hitched. Emily and Tanner are now married. I'm like, wow, a kook power couple, a Fortean UFO anomaly power couple, yay! But yeah, that's over at the Expanding Frontiers Research YouTube channel. And let's see what's next. Oh, some great books coming out. That's right, folks. Joshua Cutchin's newest book, Fourth Wall Phantoms, is being released next month. That's over at joshuacutchin.com. Fourth Wall Phantoms. And that's where Josh has published this blog announcing, today I'm pleased to announce the release date of my newest book, Fourth Wall Phantoms, as well as share the trailer and cover. The book comes out April 13th. And I'm really, really excited about this because I think it builds upon some ideas expressed by Jeff Kripal in multiple books of his. As it says here, talking about weird experiences, encounters with flying saucers, monsters, or ghosts. As shocking as these revelations might seem, they pale in comparison to an even more controversial phenomenon lurking in the shadows: encounters with fictional characters made real. Over the centuries, countless individuals have reported coming face to face with characters and creatures seemingly ripped from our collective imagination, everything from literary heroes to mythical beasts, even comic book superheroes. What at first seems like a rarity soon reveals itself as a pervasive aspect of the paranormal writ large. UFOs mimic elements of pulp depictions, cryptids emerge from folklore and fiction, urban legends materialize as authentic ghostly phenomena. Evidence abounds for those willing to listen with open minds and confront the impossible. In Fourth Wall Phantoms, acclaimed paranormal author, yes he is, Joshua Cutchin, dares to explore one of the few remaining taboos of high strangeness, the permeable fourth wall separating fiction from reality. Through a mixture of both celebrated cases and rare or never before published accounts, Cutchin invites readers to venture beyond the page in search of a in a search for truth in the unlikeliest of places, the crossroads of the paranormal, the imaginary, and the real. And Jeff Kripal is quoted as saying about this book, the story in which fiction becomes fact saved Joshua Cutchin's life. It can save yours too. That's because it is you. This was once called myth, by which our intellectual ancestors did not mean untruth, but something like, this is really weird. I laughed a lot reading this book, giggling in recognition and realization. This is really weird, even more so because it is so. Yes, I'm very excited about this, with this amazing cover as well. Fourth Wall Phantoms, Reflections on the Paranormal Narrative and Fictions Becoming Fact. Scarily reminds me of recent conversations with a certain anthropologist friend of mine about the neo-reactionary movement and one of its founders' ideas about hyperstition, the materializing, the making real of superstition and folklore. Well, moving right along, this new book coming out from MIT Press, The Saucerian. Can't wait. I hear this is great. UFOs, Men in Black, and the Unbelievable Life of Gray Barker by Gabriel McKee. The strange but true biography of the colorful founder of Saucerian Books, a central purveyor and promoter of flying saucer and conspiracist knowledge in the mid-20th century. There's some great documentaries about Gray Barker out there, Shades of Gray, and an older one. But very glad to see this type of a book coming out. Hopefully it packs a punch like I've heard it does. Quickly, I just want to also acknowledge the passing of a legend, a towering pillar of the parapsychology field, Charles Tart, born in 1937, passed recently this year. He was an American psychologist and parapsychologist, internationally known for research on the nature of consciousness. He co-founded the subdiscipline of transpersonal psychology and has experimented widely in psi and out-of-body experiences. Tart considered his primary goal was to, quote, build bridges between the scientific and spiritual communities and to help bring about a refinement and integration of Western and Eastern approaches for knowing the world and for personal and social growth. You know, there's a classic tome of his, I believe it's just called simply Altered States of Consciousness, that so blew my mind when I read it back in the 90s. I had to get my hands on a copy of it, but you can read over at psi-encyclopedia.spr.ac.uk. I know that's a long one. If you just search for Psi Encyclopedia and Charles Tart, it'll probably bring it up. And of course, we'll post this link and all the other links in the show notes for tonight's show. It's sad as we watch so many of the really important figures in this field passing. I mean, here we are with so many people begging for disclosure, begging the government to tell us what they know. And it's been 75, 80 plus years in this modern era of people trying to tackle the subject of UFOs, but also the powers of the mind, human potential, the nature of consciousness, its ability to reach beyond space and time and peer into the nonlinear underpinnings of infinity. And Charles Tart always struck me as one of the truest seekers of that knowledge. Godspeed. Meanwhile, over at SUAPS, the Society for UAP Studies.org, they have published their latest issue of Limina, the Journal of UAP Studies. You can go there and read it for free. It is volume 2, number 1, spring 2025, with a variety of articles and essays there, including those of Dr. Bertrand Mehust, one of Vallée and parapsychology's mentors or inspirations. There's also work by these other writers who I'm less familiar with, but there's also an essay by Dr. Brenda Densler of Duke University, The Discovery of Oil, OIL, Some Thoughts on Finding Other Intelligent Life, as well as essays like One Science for Both Ufologists and Astrobiologists, ? And Understanding UAP's surveying the nature spirits hypothesis, and several other essays, including this one that's you'll see there, but you can also find over at Scholastica yeah, there it is. Okay. Scholastic, it's lemina.scholasticahq.com. And this Kimberly Ingalls paper is The Importance of Phenomenology for UAP Studies. And there is the abstract and article there, essay there in PDF form that you can read and or download and read it on your favorite device. Over at popularmechanics.com, shifting gears as we wind up the show, scientists found a human Neanderthal hybrid who lived long after his people went extinct. The Lapedo boy was found in 1998, but we only now figured out when he lived. Well, he lived like 25 to 28,000 years ago. Team of researchers wrote that an updated radiocarbon dating technique allowed them to date the remains to between 27,780 and 28,550 years ago, roughly 40,000 years after Neanderthals went extinct. The ochre-stained skeleton of the roughly 4 or 5 year old child, experts believe the body was wrapped in a painted animal skin for burial in the Lagar Velho rock shelter. When found, quote, exhibited a mosaic of Neanderthal and anatomically modern human features, argued to reflect admixture between the two human populations, the authors wrote. Yeah, pretty interesting. Again, constant change as we learn more about the history of the planet we live on. And lastly, as we continue on into 2025 and reflect back on the drone flap in New Jersey and around military bases across the country and of the United States and abroad, and as drones continue to vex airports, as both civilian and military across the planet, with no governments apparently willing to name what foreign power is responsible, writing it off as quote unquote approved research and commercial flights by the FAA here in the United States. It's insane. As I suggested on previous shows, while I think that there are some more exotic hypotheses, I do really think that maybe some of this is the result of the ramping up of drone delivery systems in New Jersey and Texas and elsewhere. Not the ones at military bases. I think that's a separate issue. But I was slightly happy to hear of this news here in Texas. College Station residents pushed back against Amazon's delivery drones because of their claiming of being bothered by the noise. Some of the frequency of these things flying by was just insane, and people claiming that it was reducing their property values, spooking their pets or their livestock. I think all of these things are legitimate criticisms of the introduction of such a new technology. It's not really new, but the rollout of it in mass. I just find it interesting that, yes, unsurprisingly, perhaps someplace in Texas, College Station, though, of all places, kind of surprises me, but the residents there pushed back and got that rolled back. So it's still happening, but maybe Amazon's getting a little more PR oriented with their locals. So, well, that's going to be it for the show tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Of course, you can like, subscribe, write reviews, spread the word about the podcast. All that stuff helps. I am happy to see that the subscribers to our YouTube channel are increasing slowly, and we really appreciate everybody taking the time to take a listen, share, and distribute. And if you can, go to our patreon.com/Anomaly Archives or website and become a subscriber, either for free or if you can afford it, please support us. We really need to get our 7,000 plus volumes of books and our thousands of periodicals back into a physical location that can be more accessible to locals and researchers around the world. We, of course, are trying to ramp up a number of scanning projects so that folks who aren't in the Central Texas area can benefit from these materials. But we need your help. So thank you and good night.